Dear all Africans, Pan-Africanists all over the world, I have been asked a contribution about the Pan-Africanist decolonization philosophy and how we can share, create, shape new concepts for the emancipation of African people all over the world. I think the first thing to do is to renew the consciousness of the deep African history. In our education programs, from the primary school to the university, we must put all our energy in rooting African individuals' consciences in a deep understanding and knowledge of the main steps of African history, not only on African continent but also all over the world. By teaching that deep and long African history to our children, we will build citizens who are not only rooted in our family story, who are not only rooted in our national or continental or racial story, but we will have consciences rooted in the Pan Africanist vision of African humanity. So that, in fact, somebody who is well educated in knowing the deep and the profound past of the African people through African continent and through all its diasporas will be able to challenge tribalism, clientelism, nepotism, all those things which are clearly some prisons for our minds in our different African countries. But the number two of the decolonization process is to teach to every student that it is very important for a free human being to shape and to create his own concepts by his experience, by his knowledge, and through the comparison of what he knows, what he has learned with what other people know, what other people have learned. So that comparative knowledge is very important for the African citizen of today. If you compare African knowledge to European knowledge or globally Western knowledge or Asian knowledge or American knowledge, you will see that there are three main categories which are fundamental principles of African way of thought. The category of truth, the category of justice, and the category of solidarity. These are the three permanent principles of African civilization. By truth, we mean seeking deep knowledge in each step of our lives. By justice, we understand that we have to give to everyone what is his income in all the situation of the life. We have to impeach all kind of arbitrary fake rights in the society. We have to fight against in inequalities between all the human beings, being them men or women. We have to work for social complementarity of women and men. And we have to enforce the traditional family built on the father, the mother, and the children. See, so for me, this is the second thing help African people to be able to compare and to defend their own principles. And the third principle is the principle of solidarity, which means that never we must abandon one of ourselves on the road alone, without clothes, without house, without health, without education, without family, without love. With those three principles, we can renew the shape of our institutions, being them economic, political, spiritual, being them educational, and what else you can think. We have three fundamental principles, and those principles must inspire all the areas of our life. And this is the third level of the decolonization philosophical process, is to produce concepts that will help African people to fight against poverty, to fight against violence, and to fight against ignorance. Fighting poverty, violence, and ignorance is the work of an intellectual, an activist, a true Pan Africanist militant. In every situation, we have to think twice and to ask ourselves if we have worked on the concept that is guiding our lives. Let me give an example of this method, and that example will be taken in my last book. I will just take that example in my last book. I've just published this book, and it will be translated soon in English and in many African languages. Imperial terrorism, which is the contemporary form of the Western and Middle East aggression against Africa, with irrefutable proofs of the aggression of the NATO against Africa. In this book, I have been shaping a new concept in two words: imperialism and terrorism. Imperial terrorism. What is it? It is a concept which is more thankful than the concept of jihadism. The concept of jihadism has been invented to cheat about reality. It is a fake concept, which means that Africa is attacked on religious basis, on religious goals, by some fanatic Muslims who would like all Africans to be under the subjugation of their understanding of the Islamic religion. This fake conception of terrorism in Africa today has been developed by the NATO, by the European Union, on all mainstream Western medias. And it was done to hide the true organization of terror in Africa. So, as a philosopher, like an African Pan Africanist and activist, like an African intellectual, I observed the situation and I understood that Al Qaeda and the Islamic State are not fighting for religion. They are not forcing Muslims to become Muslims. What are they exactly doing? They have been created by Western intelligence services, the CIA, the Mossad, and many European intelligence services are, in fact, the creators of those terrorist organizations. We have multiple proofs about the creation of Al Qaeda in the 80s to fight against Soviet troops in Afghanistan. And we have many proofs today of the financing, arming, and helping given by Western services like the CIA, like the USAID, and so on to those terrorist organizations. Just follow the declassified documents of these years. Just follow the WikiLeaks scandal investigation. Just have a look on the last Trump administration's revelations about the open involvement of the most powerful Western nations in destabilizing Iraq, Syria, Libya, and finally all the Sahel and Africa through Al Qaeda and the Islamic State, which are organizations financed by Western services. So, when I created the concept of imperial terrorism, it was to put an end to the use of the concept of jihadism. Jihadism is a veil of ignorance invented by Western service to impeach the African intelligence to understand the reality of destabilization. But by thinking that we have, in fact, imperial terrorists, imperial terrorism confronting us, we are now able to name and to identify the enemy and to fight against him. You can't fight terrorism with the help of NATO's forces who have financed, invented, and who are arming those groups. giving them the best contemporary weapons. You cannot in Africa fight against terrorism by, by asking the help of those powers who supported terrorism, introduced terrorism, notably through the destruction of Libya, to impeach African people, to put an end to the dollar, euro, franc CFA currencies domination on our people. So through this book, I invented a concept to put an end to a confusion. And I think this is the goal of all the process of decolonization of African philosophy, African thought today. We have to build people able to create concepts and to confront life and affirm our own values of justice, of truth, and solidarity in all circumstances. This is for me an example of the way of decolonizing the minds by making in all African people, in all African individual, a potential creator rooted in his own tradition. Because there is no universality without unicity, without originality. We are entering in the multipolar world where Africa will just have to affirm its own civilizational personality, its own values, and to produce its own prosperity through those values. There is no universalism which could be applied to all people, all the people of the world. Universality it is a quest of particular people, particular individual, particular civilization. There is no perfect civilization in the world. We just have to respect one between. We just have to respect to have respect among ourselves, among our civilization, so we will have a peaceful earth. But this is not given. This is obtained by fight, by struggle, and by knowledge. Thank you very much. I wish you good works in Berlin, and I hope I told you my thoughts in my best possible English. Thank you. Have a good work in Berlin. I am Professor Franklin Yamsi, Wa Cameroon, Wa Africa, President of the African Freedom Institute based in Bamako, Mali. Thank you.